All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started, everybody. I know I have a lot of folks that are still trying to log in, but hey, as always, we bring a lot of great content and we got to get going. So good day, everyone. We want to thank you so much for attending one of our regular monthly broker webinars. We generally hold these at the beginning, usually the first Wednesday of each month, but we needed to move this one back just a little bit. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to sit with us here today. As always, we try to bring relevant and new topics and information to you. Ultimately, we want you to be able to walk away from these webinars with real practical application. And so let me just introduce myself. My name is Steve Jackson. I'm the Senior Vice President of Broker Concierge here at PrimePay. And today's webinar is titled Designing a Compliant Wellness Program, where we're going to focus energy certainly around that design, right? It's kind of important. But secondarily, we really are also going to focus on how these wellness programs interact, coordinate, collaborate with pre-tax benefit accounts, all right? So look forward to sharing that with you here today. Before we get started, we do want to cover some of the logistics of our webinar. As you probably have noticed, we have muted your lines. We've got a lot of folks on, so that cuts out on a lot of noise, potential noise, but that does not mean we do not want to hear from you. So you all are probably quite familiar at this time. In your GoToMeeting menu bar, there is a question box, question area, and we would love to hear from you as I go through the content here today. So at any time throughout the webinar, you can go ahead and type in your question. Go ahead and submit it. I may or may not be able to answer that question just during our webinar here today, but if I'm unable to do so, we absolutely will get back to you after the webinar and get with you directly, okay? And so we'll make sure that you get answers to your questions. This particular topic here today, I mean, does carry a lot of technicalities, and unfortunately, in an hour or so webinar, we're not able to boil the ocean, right? So there's probably going to be some questions that you're going to have that may be more specific to a real life case example, that you have, a client example that you're faced with right now, and so let's try to tackle that, after the webinar here today. As follow-up, we will always ensure a follow-up email for you. One of the biggest, or the largest number of questions that we receive is based on, is your webinar recorded? So yes, we do record all of our webinars. We post them automatically on our Broker Concierge YouTube channel. And if you subscribe to that channel, you will actually automatically see when the recording actually is posted, but we will also send a follow-up email to you as well. As many of you know, this is the year of the broker here at PrimePay in 2018, and we have done a lot in enhancing our PrimePay Broker Concierge Partner Program. And so I'd love for you to ask a question and gaining more insight as to how our Broker Concierge Program can bring a lot of these types of solutions to life through your agency to your clients. If you are a Broker Concierge partner, okay, you will also receive a slide deck. So actually the slide deck that I have here today, we will include that. That will be posted into the Broker Partner Portal. So you guys can receive that here after the webinar, all right? I think that will handle the logistics here today. I will follow up with a couple items here at the end of the webinar, all right? So we're going to go ahead and dive right in. As you know, wellness has been gaining steam here for quite some time, right? I mean, in most, I guess, as you look at actually the industry right now, there are many that say wellness sells. I mean, a big reason why we're having this this topic here today is that we hear a lot from benefits brokers. You guys, as a consultant, as a producer, you're talking about a myriad of different types of benefits and offerings with your employers. These are small employers and large employers. And I think where in the past you mostly attributed wellness or a wellness program to, the 100+ market, or golly, not even maybe 100+, the 500+ market. Well, today we are seeing self-funded plans, level-funded plans that go all the way down to 20 and 30 and 40 lives. So these small employers are being impacted, certainly, by the behavior of the employees. And so we, with what we see out there here today, more and more brokers are having the discussion about wellness. Now, are you actually pushing forth this? I mean, are employers adopting it, as a wellness program? I mean, you may have a multitude of conversations that do not lead anywhere. But I think that the desire of the employer, whether they made that decision or not, to move forward or not, they do have a desire to help the financial and the health well-being of their employees. So just some quick statistics here on how and why wellness is actually selling. So according to the Global Wellness Institute, and they're a nonprofit research and educational resource for the wellness industry, the global wellness market grew 10.6% to over $3.72 trillion from the years 2013 to 2015, which is the latest figures that we have available right now. During that same period, the global economy shrank 3.6% over the same period. One of the senior researchers there said the growth trajectory of the wellness industry appears unstoppable. And who's leading this global wellness juggernaut? It's the US, right? So America ranks #1 for spending in 4 of the 5 key market segments that the Global Wellness Institute tracks, which it is tracking not just workplace wellness, it's focused on wellness tourism, wellness real estate, spas. I see where the real growth is being had in those spas for sure. But among the main factors contributing to the growth is what this report cites. It's an increasing consumer interest in all things related to maintaining and improving health, driven by aging, a rising global epidemic of chronic disease and stress. You guys are acutely aware of that. The negative health impacts of environmental degradation, and the failure of the sick care medical model to improve quality of life. So it is, I look at, many of the dynamics of our workforce here today. And I have children, girls who are in high school, and they have me doing a Tough Mudder coming up here in a couple weeks. I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to be here for the next webinar that we have, but I think I'll survive. But what has that made me do? That has made me train. For the last 3 months, I've been training and working hard at building on my endurance and certainly other things that will impact my objective here for the Tough Mudder, right? But when you think about what is on our brains, when I leave home from my work here, I pass several CrossFit firms. There's Orange Therapy, there's yoga, there's so many other opportunities for us to actually gain in health. So why can't we have the employer kind of drive more of that, right? I mean, that's the biggest area, not just large employers, but also small employers. So that factors into kind of the wellness debate, right? We sit here and say that wellness is rising, wellness sells. In fact, most of the millennials are excited about, so many of them are working out and are staying healthy, looking to strive to stay healthy 2 times, 3 times or more each and every week. But yet the debate continues, right? Because if an employer is adopting this, they ultimately are the ones that are going to implement it, monitor it, be faced with regulations that are going to enforce certain requirements by doing it. And so this debate does continue. I came across a survey that was done by Willis Towers Watson, and it's their Global Benefits Attitude Survey. What I like about this survey is that this is strictly an employee survey, and it's focused on attitudes, right, as it pertains to employee benefits. And this particular report just last year focused on 7 trends that are impacting employee benefits, and then they went into each aspect of that. So as we look at these 7 trends, some of these are not surprising at all to you. The shift to defined contribution arrangements, right? I mean, when you first look at retirement plans, we shifted many years ago from defined benefit to defined contribution or 401k types of plans. We also, with larger companies, with some of the advent of private exchanges, we began to see employers not only adopt defined contribution arrangements in the retirement and pension side of the aisle, but it was now focused on health and welfare benefits. We continue to see that shift. The no-dust statement of the last 3 decades, rising healthcare costs clearly impacts employee benefits. Tightening of public purses. It's amazing its impact when the federal government tightens, when states and municipalities start to tighten because of how benefits affect their overall spending habits. It's absolutely tightening, those public purses as well. The multi-generation workforce, each employer has the opportunity to have an employee and an individual that is typically that baby boomer all the way to the millennial. That disparity in generations is incredible, and it points to how an employer must offer their benefits. You just can't offer the type of benefits that you offered before. Millennials want choice. Baby boomers, maybe they do, but they're probably more likely not, right? And so the flexibility, the technology innovation that has had to come in to assist with that multi-generation workforce has been extremely valuable, as you all know. And then lastly, which is what we are going to focus on here today primarily, is the trends here on focusing on health and well-being, but also the emergence of financial well-being. We have millennials that are entering the workforce today with substantial student aid debt, right? College debt. And so employers have rethought. There's now new products and opportunities for employers as they are trying to attract millennials into their organization to say, okay, if you join our company, we'll actually maybe help to cover or pay back some of your financial aid, that student debt that you have. You didn't see that at any time over the last, probably 10 years. But you now are seeing that more and more. Why? Because it's a huge burden on those individuals as they're entering the workforce. Just a couple other key stats that I thought was very impactful here as it relates to physical and emotional, health pressure. As we talk about wellness, between a quarter to a third of adults globally are inactive. Obesity rates are increasing, spike in diabetes. There's nothing new there, for you. But 70% of healthcare spending is attributed to behavioral and lifestyle choices. Amazing, right? Mental health and stress issues. 3 in 10 employees suffer from stress, anxiety, or depression. And now close to 50% of employers are introducing some type of stress relief solutions. Is that a game room? Is that a nap room? I mean, you see and hear many of employers that are adopting certain types of stress relief solutions and incorporating them into the daily regimen and routine of their employee base. The Willis Towers Watson survey went a step further, talking about poor health. And again, these are not, meant to gotchas here. It's just to reinforce the need that we need to be talking about wellness more and more here with our employers, but also certainly from an employee basis. Poor health, as you might be aware, is linked to more absences, lower engagement. So lower engagement is that presenteeism. They show up for work, but they are not engaged. They are not productive, and certainly higher stress levels. The number of days lost increases for those in poor health. Workers with poor health are more than twice as likely to be disengaged. Stress increases for those in poor health. I'm sure some of you have gone through certainly family situations, and just a health situation that has arisen certainly adds to stress during that time period, but it can be a prolonged type of stress as well. I found this very interesting also as part of this survey. Poor health and financial worries is a toxic recipe. I looked at that first column, the purple column there, financial worries and health issues. 42% of employees are worried about their finances and certainly their health issues. 64% of them said that they had above average stress or high stress. Only 25% were satisfied with their financial situation, and a little more than half live paycheck to paycheck. Very interesting. We don't have time to kind of go through that whole study, but it just points to the fact that we do have a problem, here. this isn't necessarily going away, but there's certainly ways and means that we can actually introduce things to encourage better behavior, or better yet, just create good habits, right? You do it enough, you create those good habits. So determining the wellness program type is actually very important. This is probably where you begin your conversation, or you might very well end your conversation with some employers. You see, employees look to their employers for financial wellness. Okay, they're getting a paycheck. They're wanting to grow a retirement plan. They want to utilize that retirement plan as they retire. But they also keenly look at employers for their well-being as well, right? An employer has their attention because they're there from 8 to 5, you know? And so is there a way for that employer to create really good habits? So an employer must first look at creating or adopting a wellness program. And so I've broken out really the 4 types, okay, of wellness programs, or the platforms that are utilized by employers. Now, we're going to focus today on some participatory programs, but I do just want to provide a summary of what these 4 actually mean, okay? And then maybe with follow-up with you later, we can go into greater details in regard to each of these. So just starting upper left here, you have the general educational or participatory type of program that's not health plan related. So let me just explain that real quick before we get into the summary. So a wellness program can be a standalone program. And if it is a standalone program, it probably is that upper left, the general educational or participatory, okay? Most of these, the following 3 types of programs are what's considered health plan related, which means the wellness program is tied to or connected to the employer-sponsored group health plan, okay? Which makes a lot of sense, right? You're trying to create activity and results based on, the claims experience of the plan, your employee base, but it's based on that plan, the utilization certainly in that plan. So on the upper right, we have the health plan related participatory programs. We then lower left, we have the health plan related activity only programs. And then lastly, the outcome based programs. Now I'm going to speak the least about outcome based. That could be an 8-hour webinar that we could go through and dealing with all the different regulations and information needed for outcome-based, but I am going to provide a summary here for you today, all right, of that. General educational or participatory, not health related. Again, this is generally, this generally might be the first step that an employer could take to start to create some activity around health related items. It's maybe just simply through the intranet site or employer site, providing general health information to employees and families. Maybe it's a workplace poster, an internet site that they can go to just capture more information, about a particular, item. It might be on, here's a link to recipes so that you can, actually put together a more healthy type of food items, for your family and, and for yourself. These are generally voluntary programs with no requirements, okay? The employer is simply making things available, all right? This is, this is actually, and actually too, just kind of in the 4th bullet point there, includes some health-related activity, but no rewards associated with participation. So this could just be, very simple type of lunch and learn sessions. It could be maybe a health seminar, of some sort that you make available to the employees, but there are no requirements. There are no sticks where they'd say, well, if you don't do that, you're going to get hit with a surcharge of some sort. And there's no rewards associated, no financial rewards, no T-shirts, nothing like that that's really going to come through. So this type of plan, which may be something that is very valuable for an employer who has not adopted anything but want to start to get some feet, in the water and start wading through that, this might be an area to get started, because it is subject to very few federal employment and benefits law. I mean, this is, listen, you want to get good information out to your employees, make it accessible, and transparent, and that's what this would actually do. Health plan related participatory program. This is actually something that we do and will kind of talk about as we talk about even a wellness program with pre-tax benefit accounts. So this type of program, there is a requirement to participate in some type of a health related activity. I give some examples below. Maybe it's each department going through a step challenge, right? Okay, third floor, you guys are against the second floor, and you go through a challenge, in the with your teams. Could be, listen, just during lunch, there's a walking club, and a bunch of people get out and they just start walking, right? Just kind of getting things out there. In many of these cases, at least the case of like a step challenge, that is going to be more of a requirement, to participate. Hey, we want your steps. We want you to be counting your steps. Rewards aren't tied to the results of participation, so it's just to participate. You would limit this particular type of program to employees enrolled in the employer's health plan, okay? I'm going to cover some of the regulations, but as you get into a participatory program, there will be several federal employment and benefit laws that are going to apply, okay? And so I'll touch on those actually here in a little bit. But this is something that we do see kind of, I'll call it phase 2, but actually many employers start here. They require some forms of participation. In this case, too, it actually could be a health risk assessment that could actually be included in that as well. Health plan related activity only programs. So this is, if you complete a specific activity, you then receive a reward. You now are focused on activity only. I want a certain type of activity. We're trying to drive a specific result, okay? This, again, would only apply to individuals enrolled in the employer's health plan. And again, we'll talk about some additional laws here that are going to apply. But just think about, okay, now this is an activity that does lead to a reward. And we're going to talk about some of that consistency that will be needed there as a reward is given. We'll kind of tie that into our pre-tax accounts here today. But examples include, a walking program that provides a reduction in employee contributions, maybe to their medical plan, okay? So that specific, maybe it is actually going to have your annual physical each and every year, and maybe that results in a reward. That activity would result actually in, reduction in employee contributions, or possibly, maybe there's a financial stake, in that, for money going towards gyms or, whatever it may be, as far as health centers and things like that. Health plan related outcome-based programs. Now, again, this is where you get an employer that is getting very comprehensive, and you normally would see something like this in your, 200 and 500 plus types of companies that are self-funded, that are driving really particular results. You look at a population, and generally speaking, about 10% of the population is going to drive about 90% of the claims, right? I mean, that holds true with many carriers from year to year to year. The few really provide the many. So a lot of these outcome-based programs are really centered on that, right? And so rewards are based on either the existence of a particular health condition or the results of a test, such as biometric screening. And, I provide an example here below, where say, okay, an employer could say, hey, if you get a reduction in your contributions, if your BMI is below 30, or you get a reduction in your contributions if total cholesterol is below 200, or whatever the number may be that we're trying to achieve. In that case, we're actually taking outcomes and we're saying, okay, these numbers may be good, but you also need to, we're actually going to hook you up with a wellness coach. And that coach is going to work with you to help you with your diabetes or, obesity or whatever that may be, that's the stress, whatever it may be that may be causing, some of those unhealthier types of issues. So it requires an individual to satisfy a health-related standard for reward. It only applies to employees enrolled in the employer's health plan. That's going to be pretty, specific to health plan related types of plans. And the rules are definitely more stringent than for other types of wellness programs that are out there. All right. So identifying. So we've kind of covered at least some of the actual types of programs that are out there. And today I am going to focus more so on the participatory, okay, because that is when you look at the, if we want to try to target a strategy where 80% of your employers or more would be attracted to that type of a program, it's going to be the participatory. It's a little less stringent, in the regulatory challenge that you might face an outcome-based. And so what I want to do today is focus on, some proper wellness design. And the first thing that I try to show here is that, there are some programs that aren't reasonably designed. Okay, we need to avoid these, all right, as much as possible. So a program that asks employees to provide medical information on a health risk assessment, okay, so that's an HRA, without providing any feedback about risk factors or without using aggregate information to design programs or treat any specific conditions. I mean, what are we doing? If we're just trying to get some information on a health risk assessment, what do we expect to do with that? How do we expect to change behavior? That may be good information, I suppose, based on the information that's asked, but a health risk assessment isn't going to get as deep as a biometric screening, or blood test or whatever that would actually dive deeper into the statistics, the metrics that can really impact the causes and focus on results. A wellness program that exists merely to shift cost from the employer to employees based on their health, or is used by the employer only to predict its future health cost. You see, an employer, most folks that are part of wellness, employers that are focused on wellness, you can't sit there necessarily and say that just by going into a wellness program, even to the extent of an outcomes-based, that in 3 to 5 years, you're going to see a reduction in cost by X amount, and it's going to be, it's going to be fantastic, right? I think it's been pretty much proven that you can't sit here and say that just by adopting a wellness program, you're going to see a reduction in cost. But if you have an employer that is simply establishing a wellness program to kind of stick it to the employees, give them that surcharge on the premiums without really trying to provide the opportunity for that employee or individual to change their behavior, it's probably the wrong focus, right? It's the wrong attitude, that's there. You also want to try to get away from employers who are trying to get into, kind of starting these gateway wellness programs where, and just what we mean by that is they're just denying coverage for employees who don't participate. So if you don't participate, hey, we're knocking you out of the plan. You're not even going to get in, So you're not using wellness as that gateway. So clearly those are 3 areas that, if employers have this mindset, they're probably not really focused on what the key issue is, which is changing the behavior, enhancing well-being for the employees. Some key legislative items, and today I'm talking about participation-based plans, okay, primarily. And so when you think about participation-based plans, the benefit and reward is generally available to employees without regard to health status. You are a participant in an employer-sponsored plan, and therefore you are eligible to participate, okay? One word, or actually one word, a group of words together, actually hyphenated, that are key here to this discussion, and it pops up all the time, is something called similarly situated employees. You have the ability to class. Okay, you can class a wellness program. You can change benefits based on that specific similarly situated class of employees. So as long as it's a bona fide employee classification, full-time, part-time, exempt, non-exempt, and so forth, or even by location, right? You have, you could have a Texas location, and maybe healthcare is just a little cheaper in Texas. And so your wellness program, what you're offering is maybe a little lower there, but you also have a location in New York. And New York's a lot more costly with healthcare costs. And so your wellness program benefit might be a little different, or greater benefit, there in the New York area, in that market. So participation-based plans really allow some flexibility, but at the end of the day, you still cannot, discriminate in regard to health status, okay? So, one of the things that I mentioned there out of the gate, as I talked about the 4 programs, is this wellness program tied to or associated with an employer-sponsored group health plan, or is it a standalone design? Now, I would say for the most part, most of these plans are going to be connected. They're going to be tied to and associated with that group health plan, okay? And with that being said, you really have to have considerations for the following kind of 5 areas here that I think are pretty important. HIPAA, the non-discrimination rules in HIPAA prohibits discrimination against similarly situated individuals based on a health factor. Okay, so you got to be very cautious of that. So that is health status, a medical condition, claims experience, just if that individual has receipt of health care, medical history, genetic information. So the non-discrimination rules of HIPAA are going to play deeply into how an employer is going to roll out a participatory type of a plan design. Now, there are some exceptions, okay? I had mentioned similarly situated employees, but it does allow group health plans and health insurance issuers to establish different premiums and contributions and cost-sharing amounts, right? So an employer can do that all the time. What HIPAA also drives for is it also provides requirements for the maximum reward or benefit that would be offered through the wellness program. The reward for participating in the wellness program must not exceed 30% of the total cost of coverage, okay? So they're going to control, HIPAA will control that. It's also going to control a reasonable design, okay? So they say that what HIPAA will define is, it says the wellness program must be reasonably designed to promote health or prevent disease, okay? So that's why I said before, these plans cannot just be set up for the pure purpose of somehow getting a stick instead of a carrot out there, and the employer saves money on premiums, right? It can't all just be about that reduction in cost. There also needs to be an annual opportunity. So HIPAA also states that the program must allow individuals an opportunity to participate at least once per year. There also must be a reasonable alternative standard. These similarly situated individuals must also have a reasonable alternative standard for those individuals who may not be able to satisfy the standard, right? So it's kind of important there. So if you're going to introduce a walking program, let's say, but a doctor is telling you based on your medical condition that you're unable to perform, with that, then an employer adopting that wellness program should actually have an opportunity for that employee to submit their doctor's note and not need to fulfill that specific requirement. The last thing then that HIPAA does is the required disclosure, and we'll talk about that here even with ERISA, but the program must disclose any reasonable standards, the availability of waivers, things of that nature as it relates to non-discrimination. You also have ADA, so the Americans with Disabilities Act, and Title I there prohibits employers from discriminating against a qualifying individual on the basis of disability, right? And so what they have introduced as part of these wellness programs is the ability to have voluntary medical examinations. And the term there, or the special word there, is voluntary. And so basically it's saying that the plan is considered voluntary so long as participation is not required and employees are not penalized for non-participation in the opportunity where that particular individual has that disability. Then you come across GINA, the Genetic Information and Non-Discrimination Act. And basically what that is stating is that you cannot collect genetic information for underwriting purposes, as it relates to enrollment. So in the health risk assessment, you've got to be very cautious with, are you asking for medical history, family medical history on these health risk assessments? You may be violating, some of the data protected type of requirements that GINA is going to enact. You also then have ERISA. So generally, this is going to be tied to a group health plan. And if the particular wellness plan offers medical care, example would be they provide a flu shot. So if the program itself, meaning there are not only coaches, but there are clinical staff that actually provide medical care, that is also going to constitute an employer welfare benefit plan. And they're going to need to comply with the ERISA requirements, which is going to be, maintaining a plan document, providing documents to participants like a summary plan description, filing Form 5500 annually if appropriate, and so on and so forth. So ERISA can be included in there. It is rare, but potentially on the outcome-based types of plans, you could have an ERISA responsibility there. And also, lastly, COBRA. If this is found to be an ERISA plan where it is providing medical care, then it is also going to qualify under COBRA. And that would mean, due to a qualifying event, that qualified beneficiaries would be able to choose from the wellness program as if they were an active employee themselves, right? So there's a lot of legislative items, and the more you go down that spectrum, of just simply a standalone wellness benefit providing basic information and that's it, to an outcomes-based, you are going to be faced with implementing a plan that is directly under the requirements of HIPAA and ADA and GINA, ERISA, and COBRA, all combined. All right. So as we look at outcome-based rewards, you have the ability to structure it a little differently. Outcome-based standards must not exceed 30% of the cost of coverage for tobacco cessation. For that, that can be actually up to 50%. For outcome-based, you do need to focus on a reasonable design to promote health and prevent disease. You have to provide annual opportunities to qualify, so you can't just, say, well, you failed this year, and so that means the next year you're going to have that surcharge on your premium. You're not going to get any additional credits from the employer in any way. No, you have to have that annual opportunity to qualify, and that's the same for any of the participatory programs as well. With outcome-based, you do need to focus on reasonable alternative standards. So if a particular employee individual is unable to perform a specific activity, that there must be an alternative standard there for that employee to drive some behavioral change, and still participate, but maybe not in that same fashion. And then also with outcome-based, you're going to have those additional required disclosures that you'll see in ERISA, but also potentially then their COBRA as well. Lastly, as you think about steps to a proper wellness plan, employee communication is huge. Now, there were new rules published in May of 2016 under ADA, so under the Americans with Disabilities Act, that requires employers that offer wellness programs that collect employee health information to provide a notice to employees informing them what information is going to be collected, how it's going to be used, who's going to receive that information, and what will be done to keep it confidential. Now, EEOC has published a sample notice that complies with ADA. So I would seek you to, Google that through EEOC. They do provide sample notices that helps employers through that process. They also have a very excellent Q&A section that will help from an employer basis in regard to this type of communication. Here's the thing, so that we have model notices, right? That certain governmental agencies will help provide, which is a huge help. It gives us direction, but that direction is secondary to the success of a wellness program, and it's all around attitude, it's around passion, it's around engagement, and it's around communication. You can't adopt a wellness program where only the key stakeholders are engaged, right? That passion, attitude, willingness to change must drift down into those direct line managers that are working with those teams, the regular workforce each and every day. They've got to drive that passion down to that level so that those individuals can get excited about the opportunities that wellness program is going to deliver on. So you got to encourage grassroots participation. It's no different. It happens here at PrimePay all the time. If you ultimately want something to breathe life into something, you've got to get it into every individual's hands. And so that communication and participation is critical. Get things started. Right, they can get started pretty easily, even before a pre-launch of the wellness. There could be pre-existing activities that are currently going on. Encourage that. Celebrate that. Employees walking at lunch, somebody who's lost just a tremendous amount of weight, here in a short amount of time, whatever it may be, celebrate, those moments, celebrate that success. And communicate regularly. It's something that, we all get stuck in the grind, right? Between family life and work life, we get stuck in that. And so it's important that we not only communicate the benefits and the opportunities that wellness program is going to provide for, but also the legal requirements where we're required to publish or state that particular information. All right, wellness programs. Thinking about, as we're talking about steps to a proper wellness plan, well, we've got to talk about the Taxman. So, Steve, what does this mean? Okay, so I have a wellness program where an employer is wanting to have employees participate in a particular task or activity. And if they go through that particular activity, I want to be able to kind of give them something of some sort, so what does that mean? Can I provide cash? Could I help provide money towards a gym membership? Maybe we're just having this huge wellness fair and I want to hand out t-shirts or water bottles and so things like, some things like that. What does that mean, to us? So basically, there is no, as you see there in the t-shirt or water bottle bullet, there is no such thing as a de minimis benefit with wellness. So all amounts are going to be included as income. So it's going to be very important for that employer, based on the type of activity that is being generated, that they're being conscientious on how that particular item or cash or dollars, would be taxed or not taxed. So when it's just cash, gift cards, rewards type based of, cash equivalents, that's going to be taxed as income. Gym memberships or monies towards a gym membership, reimbursements and so forth, that's going to be taxed. A health seminar, no, I mean, generally not, it's informational purposes only, unless there was something activity tied directly to that, and then there was some type of an employer kind of reward equivalent that came out of that, then maybe. But just a health seminar information, that's not going to be taxable. Certainly a reduction. Then you get into some of the further opportunities for an employer to provide contributions where it's not taxed. This is where there's a lot of great opportunity here, folks, because oh man, do we want to sit there and hand out $100 and a gift card for them completing that specific activity? You gotta work that through payroll and deductions and taxes and all of that stuff. So, it's actually maybe more simply, could we enable a reduction of the cost sharing under the group health plan or under an HRA, which would be a health reimbursement arrangement that would be non-taxable. A contribution to an FSA, HRA, or HSA is non-taxable. Clearly, we'd have to look at plan design, but it's in a non-taxable basis there. So that's very advantageous, certainly for an employer to look at making those contributions based on activities towards these pre-tax benefit accounts. All right, so I love, well, I don't know, I love this quote as we get started. So thank you, Dr. Joe Wellness Tips. Your body was designed to be active. If you don't want to lose it, then use it. I thought it was so appropriate as we talk about pre-tax benefit accounts, the use it or lose it rule, right? And just really ultimately how it applies here to health. Let me tell you, I am practicing for this Tough Mudder. I've trained now for several months. What has occurred is that I am creating some habits, right? My hope is that once this Tough Mudder is complete and I get out of the hospital, no, not going to do that. Once I'm through with that I've created some habits to continue on, right, with my training, to continue to improve on that. And so our bodies were absolutely designed to be active, and so we don't want to lose it, right? So let's use it. That's the whole premise here. One of the greatest ways, one of the three types of strategies that have been so beneficial for employers and employees alike are pre-tax benefit accounts. And we're not going to spend the time talking about what are these things, but really just focus in on how they can be used here with wellness programs. And so just first off, kind of just some rules of the road as we look at kind of the design of these types of plans. Let's kind of focus in on a couple of the key items, okay? These are the things that you need to follow. And again, I'm going to focus on participatory-based programs. This is going to be 80% or more of the time what employers are going to adopt. And this is, I think, where conversations will begin. You generally do not move from, you don't start right in the outcomes-based activity, okay, that side of the aisle. You're going to start, more on a slower, phased type of an approach. So under a participatory-based program, what you want to keep in mind, so an employer is saying, okay, folks, I want you to complete a certain activity. Based on that activity, I am going to give you a financial reward, okay? And that reward must be made to all similarly situated employees. We talk a lot about non-discrimination, and what non-discrimination is all about is to ensure that the highly compensated employees are not receiving a greater share of the overall benefits, okay? So you can always favor discriminatively. You can always discriminate against the highly compensated employees. You just can't do it the other way around. So as you create these types of programs, be focused on those classes. Now in many cases, there are no classes, per se, right? And the employer is going to provide a standard benefit amount, for each and every employee who is enrolled, in the group health plan. But there are many employers that have opportunities to be able to create different benefit designs and amounts based on those similarly situated employees. So that's where you want to truly focus. Be consistent in that approach, okay? Now, typically under an FSA, due to the Affordable Care Act, it introduced what's called accepted benefits and non-accepted benefits. And it's put some restrictions on how an employer can make a contribution to a health flexible spending account, okay? What you are primarily focused on as we talk about a wellness program is that it's going to be focused on a fixed contribution, okay, that can be not greater than $500. Now, I'll talk a little bit about a matching contribution that could apply. It's a little more unlikely that it would be a great fit for a overall wellness program, but it could. but the main emphasis is that an employer could put up to $500 into a health FSA for an employee. Okay, so there's FSA, HRA. And when I speak of HRA, I'm now talking about a health reimbursement arrangement. Okay, now as you know, this is 100% employer funded, and generally what we see as we think about a wellness program, that we have an employer that has a high deductible health plan. Generally, they're establishing an HRA wellness credit that'll be focused on deductibles. And so it's called kind of a deductible credit that would be enabled. And then lastly here, you have an HSA, so a health savings account. Very popular. The growth is amazing right now in this area. And it gives an employer an opportunity to truly be able to put some seed money into an HSA based on wellness activities that they complete, okay? So generally in an HSA, again, this is going to be more of a fixed employer contribution that would be applied to the HSA. And unlike an FSA cap, which is $500 if the employer is using a fixed contribution, there is no cap other than the annual maximum limits to the HSA. But a couple other things. This fixed employer contribution would be applied either under a cafeteria plan, so meaning the employer has adopted a Section 125 cafeteria plan and these HSA contributions flow within that plan or under that plan, or an employer could make those contributions outside of a cafeteria plan where the HSA contribution is not included. Now that is rare. But if an employer does do it outside of the cafeteria plan, you are going to want to note specific comparability rules that apply in those scenarios. I would say probably 90% or more of the time, employers are running contributions under their cafeteria plan. Okay, so what's important there is that then we need to follow Section 125 non-discrimination rules. Okay, will apply to those specific contributions. So first, just to break it down, kind of in summary here, these three. So I kind of outlined some key thoughts, okay? The employer, what I want to do is just summarize now each one of these here. So we have FSA, so the flexible spending account. So we've got an employer contribution. So an employee, as I show in the example below, the employee simply completes a health risk assessment. Okay, and that employer, based on that completion of the health risk assessment, they get to receive $150 in your health FSA. Okay, so by that completion, as long as as we look at the information above, the employer cannot contribute a fixed dollar amount more than $500, or it would it would affect the accepted benefit rules, okay, of a health FSA. I see one of the questions that have come through. Well, hey, I thought that an employee could actually contribute way more than than $500. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely correct. You know, the cap is say $2,600, $2,650, I think is the number here right now. But as far as an employer, the employer can only put up to, as a fixed contribution, $500, okay? A dollar for dollar match is acceptable, all right, but it's probably unlikely in a wellness program that an employer would probably adopt some type of dollar for dollar match as it pertains to activities, okay? So don't be confused with the overall maximum contribution limit that an employee can make. This is in addition to that employee contribution, okay? So that's this $500 here. All right, so in this example, an FSA, a health FSA, can be used where the employer says, okay, you've completed that specific task. I'm now going to add a FSA credit of $150 into your health FSA. So this would apply to all employees under the wellness program. They would be eligible. This particular contribution would be a non-elective contribution. So think about that. You're going to have, typically you're only going to have between 25–30% participation in a health FSA with health FSA accounts with a given employer, okay? Meaning out of 100 employees in a company, probably 25–30 employees will participate generally into that health FSA. By making a non-elective contribution, you are now increasing the participation in that account, right? You are also maybe increasing awareness of that benefit to each of those employees, which is going to result in what? It's going to result in more contributions to a health FSA in the future or the dependent care account. It's going to reduce FICA taxes for the employer. It's going to reduce a lot of taxes for the employee. So having a wellness program that is establishing an activity where the direct result is you complete that activity, you get a credit in your FSA, can actually benefit in a lot of other ways, right? The next is health reimbursement arrangements. You know, generally speaking, employers are sponsoring today a high deductible health plan. And I just throw out an example there. You know, we've got a $4,000, $8,000 deductible. That's very common, right? I mean, for the most part, you see a lot out there. Typically, under a wellness program, the employer is pledging to contribute an additional fixed amount as a deductible credit. They might already have a health reimbursement arrangement in place, maybe not. Maybe they just incorporate this as a new HRA plan design. So that employer would offer it to all employees, similarly situated employees. The employer is stating here in this example, we're going to pledge a $1,500 benefit amount or contribution, if you will, to employees participating in its smoking cessation program. It's not saying anywhere here about outcomes, right? We're not saying that that employee stopped smoking, okay? But attestation is required. They need to show proof that they've completed that class, that course. You know, they have a certificate, whatever, pass the test, whatever it may be. But it's not really requiring that nicotine test, you know, afterwards. In 90 days, we're going to test you to make sure. That's not going to be the case, you know, with this. You also want to ensure with a deductible credit through a health reimbursement arrangement, you want to ensure that the benefit is not more than 30% of the total cost of coverage. That's part of the HIPAA non-discrimination rules under those features and benefits of that particular rule, legislative rule. All right. So that's why, you know, so if the employee had $5,000 worth of single employee coverage throughout the year, 30% of 5,000 is 1,500. This particular benefit of 1,500 is good. It fits the requirement, you know, in that particular example. If the cost of coverage was lower, I would have to reduce the amount of this benefit from 1,500 to maybe 1,000 based on the overall cost of coverage. Health savings accounts. This is where you truly see fixed contributions. We do see a lot of opportunities for employers here today. This is generally fixed contributions to an eligible employee's HSA. As I mentioned before, this can be done, these contributions can be done either under or outside of a cafeteria plan, okay? What you do want to make sure, and what will rule the day, are the non-discrimination testing requirements under Section 125, if it's under a cafeteria plan, or the comparability rules outside of that cafeteria plan. Now, those aren't stringent. They really are not that stringent. If you're abiding by similarly situated employees and you are being consistent kind of across the whole breadth of the population, you should generally be good. But with smaller employers, that can come into play based on who are those of whom are participating or not. So in the example here, you have an employer that sponsors a qualified high deductible health plan for an HSA. And quite simply now, again, we're taking an activity, we're just saying here again, upon completion of a health risk assessment, it doesn't have to be a health risk assessment. It could be, did you take care of your annual preventative care? Did you have an annual screening? Did you have a vision visit? Did you have a dental visit, and so forth? But it's upon completion of that specific assessment or activity, the employer then will make a in this case, $250 contribution to an HSA. Again, the overall benefit amount cannot exceed 30% of the cost of coverage. So be considerate of that. But think about what dollar amounts going into an HSA can do. I talked about tax savings. With an HSA, this is going to drive not just participation in the benefit, but a greater financial preparedness for out-of-pocket medical expenses, whether they need them today or whether they're going to need them all the way into retirement. So the result of a wellness program where an employer is establishing a credit of some sort to go into the HSA based on an activity being, completed, it really can create seed money that smartly impacts participation in the overall HSA program. You see, the impact of not only changing behavior in one area can impact another and can impact another, right? I mean, it absolutely can do those things. These pre-tax benefit accounts are simple steps that employers can take to really move or begin to move the needle on financial wellness and well-being, okay? Self-care, taking care of ourselves. So again, I hope that this particular information was beneficial, and we'd love to talk to you, further, certainly just about how we are here at PrimePay. We have the ability to incorporate some of these pre-tax benefit account solutions to match the specific wellness program that you may be enacting or implementing with your client. So a lot of information there. I hope that it was helpful. I do want to thank you so much for attending this webinar. As I had stated from the start of the webinar, we will be providing a follow-up email that will provide a link to the recording for all. All right, and you can find that by subscribing to our Broker Concierge YouTube channel, but you'll also get the email. And for our Broker Concierge partners, we will also be supplying a copy of this slide deck to you, and it will be put into the broker portal. Just give us a couple days, and that will be actually taken care of. If you don't know what PrimePay is doing here in 2018, we'd love you to seek out more information. We have titled this year the Year of the Broker. We've put a tremendous amount of additional tools, resources, and enhancements in equipping your agency with the various comprehensive solutions that PrimePay delivers. And we'd love for you to seek out our team, our Broker Concierge team, today to just learn more about that program and how we can help you and your agency meet your goals and objectives here in 2018. We want to invite you in next month. Our June webinar will be on June 6th. And this one actually will be offering 1 hour of CE credit. Guys and gals, you will not want to miss this. Technology has been hugely transforming the employee benefit landscape and industry. And where it's greatly being utilized is through you, your agency. You're delivering this technology that your employers are utilizing. You are becoming truly a market disruptor out there in your industry. And so we want to bring some education, but we also want to provide some practical application. And we're going to have one of our affinity partners join us as well for that webinar to take that CE, but take it to the next level where how you as an agency are able to, you yourself, use technology to transform the employee benefit industry that you are delivering ultimately to your clients. So join us. Look for invites and registrations to be coming here over the next week or so, but we would love that you can join us. So with that, that will conclude our webinar here today. Appreciate your attendance and look forward to seeing you here in June. Have a great day.